Hello fellow New Zealanders. What a lovely day it is in New Zealand today. Isn't it nice being down here in New Zealand where we make our own laws and aren't part of a larger union of some sort? Now, replace every New Zealand in that sentence with UK. Ooh. Hey guys, Willy here, and yes, you read that title correctly. Brexit might not be the end of the world for the UK. But what do I know? I'm just an uneducated Kiwi trying to form his own opinions. All I'm trying to do is encourage a bit of actual debate on this matter, so I'd suggest taking everything you hear in this video with a grain of salt. But not as much salt as the Remain voters are spewing right now. Oh! If you're like me, then you'd literally never heard of Brexit and the referendum until pretty much the day it happened. What can I say? I try to keep up with the news, but in New Zealand you only get so many stories that aren't rugby, weather, or errant sheep. However, try as you might, you will not have been able to avoid this story. It is the biggest story of our time. What a gem. The UK leaves the EU. But what does that actually mean? Well, on a surface level, that's easy. The United Kingdom is no longer a part of the European Union.
Yes, Willy, but all you did was unacrosticize the acronym.
I have spoken. Seriously though, to begin to understand the implications and subtleties of Brexit, you actually need a little bit of a history lesson. Pretty rich, coming from a man who dropped social sciences just as soon as he could. Curse you, hindsight. Why don't we start with the EU, or European Union if you prefer. I don't prefer, takes too long to say. If I said European Union every time I said EU in this video, it'd be about 40 minutes long. The EU has a strange history. Believe it or not, it started its existence as an organisation that facilitated the production of steel and coal throughout Europe. The European Coal and Steel Community, or ECSC, may have seemed innocuous enough, but it was the beginning of the journey towards a free market in Europe, and it very much intended to be. Among the aims proposed during the formation of the ECSC in 1952 were creating a united Europe, encouraging world peace, and making war between member states almost impossible. Are you sure this is just a coal and steel thing? Sounds to me like you're trying to create some sort of European Union. Oh, you know, and somewhere down the list is revitalising the European economy, starting with the coal and steel sector, but who gives a f***? So the history of the EU dates all the way back to 1952. I'm going to do my level best to compress 60 years of history into about a minute for your viewing pleasure. Over the years, a number of treaties were signed, and with each treaty, a new sector was added to this rapidly growing union. In 1955, the Western European Union came on board. The sheer number of acronyms is going to be the death of me. In 1957 and 58, the European Economic Community and the European Atomic Energy Community came on board as well. The EU is pretty much just an amalgamation of more bloody acronyms than you can shake a steel rod at. It wasn't until 1992 that someone came along and said, "For Christ's sake, can we lose some of the bloody letters?" And thus, the EU was officially born. Except then it was known as the European Community, or EC. Come on! Okay, but seriously, the EU was officially named as such in 2007. As I understand it, the EU is just a big fat trading scheme. It's probably the best modern attempt at a single market. Now, I'm far from an expert in economics, and what I've read is really difficult to condense, but I'm going to do my best. The aim of a single market is to have unrestricted movement of people, goods, services, and capital within its jurisdiction. This basically means that citizens of member states within the EU are free to live or work anywhere within the EU, and they don't have to apply for working visas or any of that nonsense. It also means that businesses have virtually unlimited access to new consumers from outside their country's borders. A single market has plenty going for it. Because production is not hindered by borders and trade protocol, productivity increases tremendously. This means high quality products at unbelievably low prices. Pretty believably actually, when you see them you believe them. It also makes monopolies nearly impossible due to how competitive and changing the environment is. However, A single market is not kind to all local businesses. Firms that might have previously benefited from national market protection are suddenly outdone by these massive international companies who have a better business model. But then again, protectionism is maybe a little backward. It encourages heavy taxes on foreign imports to allow local businesses to effectively monopolize the market. So the concept of a single market sounds pretty great, and I'd have to say it is. Now, the EU have taken a number of steps to truly unify Europe's economy. Most notably, of course, the introduction of the euro. The Eurozone comprises 19 countries who use the euro as their currency, making the euro the second largest reserve currency in the world. What would the Oceanian currency be called? The ocean? The dollary-do? There are a few member states of the EU that don't use the euro, notably Sweden and the UK. Not anymore, though! So where does the UK's sudden referendum fit into all of this? Well, it's not sudden. It's not even the first referendum they've had on the matter. In 1975, a referendum was held in the UK on whether they should remain in what was then the EEC. The result was a pretty hefty 67% in favour of remaining. I wonder if people who voted Remain will treat that referendum like English football fans treat the 1964 World Cup, or whenever it was, 1966 World Cup. We won that one. Lost the other one. Won in 1966 or 1975. We won in 1975! Between 1975 and 2013, various political campaigners held secession from the EU as one of their key policies. They were struck down one after the other. However, in 2013, Prime Minister Cameron David. Cameron David sounds like someone in a boy band. Probably thinking of Craig David. Prime Minister David Cameron announced that there would be a referendum on the matter if the Conservative Party were elected in 2015. And they were, by a majority. On the 22nd of February 2016, David Cameron announced that the referendum would be held on the 23rd of June. Now, that probably should have been big news everywhere, right? Even in New Zealand. I'll tell you why it wasn't, though. I'll bet you anything that the most popular news stories that day in New Zealand were to do with the 5th anniversary of the Christchurch earthquake. It's just funny how things like that happen, how things like that can fall on the same day. So now that the history lesson is finally over, there's still a burning question remaining.
Why they do this? The UK had a good thing going. What possible reason could they have for leaving?
Okay, well, why don't you put that thought on ice for a second and I'll do my best to explain. Firstly, not as though it's a huge surprise. The decision to leave could be viewed as conservative, and seeing as you just voted in a conservative government, you can see how it might, these things happen. It's a thing, it makes sense. Social media would have you believe, through the use of some dank Brexit memes, that virtually everyone was against leaving, and those who were for leaving are racist bigots who just want an Aryan society. Perhaps true in the northernmost reaches of England, probably not overall. I resent that. Anyway, the reason that social media has had such a lopsided reaction is really simple. Conservative voters tend to be older, so they have less of a presence on social media. End of story.
Okay, well, you've explained the result, but you haven't given any reasons, you filthy Leave sympathiser.
Cool it. Getting there. You're right, though. Old people being old is not an actual reason to vote Leave. But believe it or not, the EU is not the perfect cupcake that it makes itself out to be. I'll start with the euro. As I said earlier, of the 28 member states in the EU, 19 have adopted the euro as their currency. Common knowledge. Less well known is the fact that several other member states are virtually obliged to adopt the euro in future. Now, admittedly, the UK was exempt from any such obligation, but still, sounds a bit like a passive-aggressive attempt to monopolise the market, right? Oh, sure. Don't adopt the euro, but you won't get the benefits that the other countries are getting if you don't.
That's a pretty weak point, Willy. You said it yourself, the UK were exempt, so why does it matter?
Alright, that's fair. I'll move on. But I will add that the EU does not have a policy in place regarding dropping the euro, thereby inactively discouraging it. Once you're in, you're in. Once you go euro, you must conform. That was awful. So let's talk about acts. Not that kind of act, silly. The EU kind. Have you heard of the European Parliament? Me neither. Today is a day for learning things. Well, the EP is a body of 751 democratically elected representatives who convene 4 times a year to discuss the EU's legislation. You get all that? I spit that pretty fast. I think I should be a rapper.
Okay, that seems kind of fine. Where are you going with this?
Well, the seats are distributed according to population. So, Germany has the most seats, Malta has the least. You with me so far? Because that means that no matter how big of a country you are vastly outnumbered by everyone else. No exceptions. That doesn't mean much by itself. So let's move to the next level. Next, we have the European Commission. Oh boy, another EC. This is a board of 28 people who actually propose and implement the EU's legislation.
Oh, cool. So they're elected too?
Well, not exactly. You see, these 28 representatives, one from every country of the EU, are nominated by their respective governments and then have to get through a 50% majority vote from the 751 members of parliament. Do you see the problem here? It's completely up to 751 people to choose people to basically rule over the EU. These 751 might be chosen by the people, but the Commission could potentially be completely self-serving, and their word is literally law. There are 3 kinds of acts that the Commission can implement: regulations, directives, and decisions. Ignore the last 2, regulations are what you need to worry about. Regulations can be set in place with no warning, and they become law the moment they are passed, automatically overriding laws within individual states that might conflict with the regulation. So, as an exaggerated example, a country might have a law where beef patties have to be 100% beef. Then the EU might come along and say, hey, f*** you, only needs to be 50%. How's that? Now, I'm sure that's just silly. I'm sure the Commission board have their heads screwed on and everything they do is above board. Oh wait, maybe not. A member of the Commission is chosen by their country's government, so they cannot be directly removed by election. Rather, they need to lose their 50% majority from the European Parliament. What's more, the Commission President is also not elected, so these 28 people hold all this power over the EU and they cannot be stepped down via election. You thought Brexit wasn't democratic? How's this for undemocratic? This is some FIFA level nonsense, man. In 2009, 66% of complaints made against the EU were about the Commission, and of those, 36% were regarding a lack of transparency. If that doesn't convince you that shady stuff goes on within the EU, I don't know what will. Even though I've said all of this, there are people who will still refuse to acknowledge that there are 2 sides to this referendum, and to you I say, tough shit. You cannot fail to turn up to vote and then complain that 52% is not a big enough majority. Screw you. That's how democracy works. You cannot complain about the elderly not being around to live with the decision much longer. What a horrid thing to say. Not to mention, it's a stupid point. These old people have seen much more of the EU than you have, and so they have much more insight into how it works. And to those trying to get a second referendum, a do-over, ha 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 ha, good luck. The UK has been refused entry to the EU twice before. Once in 1963, once in 1967. You can try get back in, but I doubt Europe will let you. So please, for the love of the Queen, get some better arguments. There are cons and pros. Accept it. If you want to improve your arguments, I suggest researching the points I made and countering them. Until you've done that, you're just going to have to accept that Brexit isn't so bad.
He said it! He said it!
Okay, I got a bit vicious at the end there, but I just want to reinforce that I'm only trying to stimulate reasoned debate on this matter. It gets really tiresome seeing the same crap on Facebook and on the news and hearing it on the radio, etc, etc, etc. Personally, I'm still actually leaning towards being against Brexit, but at least I did some research. If somehow you've made it this far, thank you. I promise that these videos are going to get less political at some point, but I just couldn't pass up an opportunity like this. If you'd like to see a slightly more light-hearted video about Australia, click here. Or if beer is more your thing, why don't you click here? If there's something that you think isn't so bad, why don't you scroll down to the comments and let me know what it is? Or if you have any more points to add about this whole Brexit thing, please leave a comment. I'll see you around, guys. You cannot, shit. You cannot, you cannot, not, shit. But I've seen so many